I need to vent because what went down last Thursday has been simmering for nearly 15 years, and now I'm watching everything crumble exactly as I orchestrated. Yes, you read that correctly. Orchestrated. This isn't a heartbroken guy reeling from betrayal. This is me carrying out a plan I've been crafting since I was 19. Let's start with Thanksgiving, since that's what everyone will want to know about first. I drove 6 hours to my parents' suburban home, as I do annually, fully aware of what I was stepping into, but needing them to reveal their true selves one final time before I tore everything down. I'm 30 now, with a solid career in tech consulting, own my apartment outright, and have spent the past decade deliberately constructing a life that looks impressive enough to spark their envy while staying just close enough to let them think they could still exploit me. I arrived around 3 p.m. and instantly sensed something was off. The house felt strange, emptier somehow. I went upstairs to leave my overnight bag in my old bedroom, and that's when I saw it. My childhood room, which still had my name on a wooden sign outside the door last Christmas, was completely stripped. Boxes were piled everywhere, holiday decorations, old furniture, essentially a storage closet. My mother, Margaret, appeared behind me and casually remarked that it was time to be practical about space. They were renovating, and there was no need to maintain a shrine for someone who only showed up twice a year. She said it so nonchalantly, like she was discussing wallpaper. I didn't react, just nodded and carried my bag back downstairs to leave it by the front door. That's when I noticed the hallway walls. You know those family photo displays every suburban home has? The ones that document every milestone, vacation, and graduation? I'd been methodically erased. Not recently, either. This had been done gradually with care. My high school graduation picture was gone, but Ryan's was still there. The family beach trip from 2015 had been swapped for one from 2017 that I wasn't in. Every photo with me had been removed, cropped, or replaced. I found the missing photos an hour later when I took the kitchen trash out to the garage bins. Someone had ripped them up, not neatly, just torn them into pieces and tossed them like junk mail. My college graduation. Me and Ryan as kids. Me with Grandpa Martin at his 75th birthday, all shredded and sitting among coffee grounds and eggshells. I stood in the garage, staring at my own face torn into strips and thought, yes, this is exactly what I needed. Proof. Validation. The final confirmation that I wasn't paranoid or overly sensitive as they'd claimed for years. I went back inside, and Margaret was setting the table, chatting about how nice it was that Ryan's girlfriend couldn't make it this year, so it was just family. My Aunt Patricia arrived with her husband, Leonard, and immediately started questioning whether I was still messing with computers or had found a real job yet. I told her I was a senior consultant now, overseeing 3 accounts, and she laughed, saying, "That's sweet, dear. Ryan's in medical sales and just bought a yacht." Leonard chimed in, saying at least Ryan knew how to earn real money, not just tinker with screens. Dinner felt like a script I'd seen 100 times. Every conversation either excluded me entirely or framed me as the family letdown. Ryan bragged about his sales figures, and everyone applauded him like he'd invented penicillin. Margaret mentioned her friend's daughter, who just made partner at a law firm, staring at me like I should feel ashamed. Grandpa Martin asked Ryan about his investments. Patricia talked about the cruise she and Leonard were planning and how wonderful it would be to have successful kids who could join them. Then Ryan brought up the photos. He'd noticed 2, clearly, and thought it would be funny to mention it publicly. He said Mom had done a great job redecorating, really cleared the walls, got rid of the clutter. Patricia asked what clutter, and Ryan gestured at me, saying, "You know, the excess baggage, the pictures of people who don't really add to the family." Everyone laughed, real hearty laughter. Margaret actually said it out loud then, that she and Dad had been sorting through old stuff and realized they were holding onto photos of their biggest regret, that it made sense to celebrate the child who actually brought them pride. She said it while passing the stuffing, just dropped that bombshell like it was a casual comment about the gravy. Patricia announced that she and Leonard had been running a betting pool with some extended family about when I'd finally take the hint and stop showing up to family gatherings. She said 17 people were in, and the pot was at $400. Leonard said he'd bet on Christmas, figuring I was too stubborn to give up before then. Ryan said he'd wagered I'd keep showing up for the next decade because I was too pitiful to build my own family and had to cling to theirs. Grandpa Martin, who taught me to fish and helped with my college applications, who I genuinely thought cared about me, looked at me and said they should have stopped at one kid, that Ryan was perfect, and I was proof you don't tempt fate. Then he raised his glass like it was a toast, and everyone else raised theirs too except me, because what do you even do in that moment? I sat there for maybe 30 seconds, staring at them. My mother, brother, aunt, uncle, grandfather, all smiling, enjoying themselves, completely at ease with what they'd just said. And I realized this was it. The moment I'd been working toward for 15 years. The moment they showed, beyond any doubt, that they genuinely didn't value me as a person, that I wasn't imagining things or being too sensitive. They literally openly wanted me gone, so I smiled. I actually smiled at them. Then I stood, took my plate to the kitchen, scraped it into the trash, and washed it. I grabbed the kitchen trash bag, tied it up, and took it to the garage bins. I picked up my overnight bag from the front door, put on my coat, and walked to my car while they sat at the table, looking confused. Ryan called after me, asking where I was going, and I told him I was taking out the trash, like always. Then I got in my car and drove 6 hours back home. Here's the thing, though, and this is what I need you to understand because it's critical. I wasn't hurt. I wasn't crushed. I wasn't crying on the drive home or having a meltdown about family rejection. I was relieved. I was actually thrilled because they'd finally done it. They'd finally said, out loud in front of witnesses, exactly what they thought of me. No more doubts. No more gaslighting about how I was too sensitive or misread their humor. They'd laid it all bare, and now I could do what I'd been planning for over a decade. See, my family doesn't know certain things about me. They don't know that when I was 19 and Dad's business was failing, I co-signed the refinancing of their house because my credit was better than Ryan's, and they needed a family member's signature. They don't know I've been making extra mortgage payments for 8 years through a separate account, so it looked like they were getting bank assistance. They don't know that when Ryan's sales job thrives, it's because I built him a client database and management system he thinks he paid a freelancer for. But I did it for free and maintained it. They don't know that Patricia and Leonard's retirement account is tied to an investment group I have admin access to through my company's financial partnerships. They don't know that Grandpa Martin's upscale assisted living facility, which he thinks his veteran benefits cover, is actually partly funded by a trust I set up. They don't know I've spent 15 years quietly ensuring their comfortable lives while they treated me like dirt. All of it was intentional, so when this moment arrived, I'd have power. And now that moment is here. I got home Friday morning around 2 a.m., exhausted but energized, and started making calls. Not to them, to banks, to account managers, to the assisted living facilities billing office, to the company hosting Ryan's client system. I spent Black Friday doing what I'm best at, managing complex technical and financial setups, except this time I was unraveling them. By Saturday afternoon, my phone was exploding. Texts from Margaret asking if I'd gotten home safely, which was ironic since she'd called me her biggest regret 48 hours earlier. Voicemails from Patricia asking if I was upset about something because Leonard thought I'd taken their jokes too seriously. A message from Ryan saying Mom was worried and I should call her. Nothing from Grandpa Martin because he doesn't text, but I'm sure he'd have called if he knew what was coming. I didn't reply to any of them, just kept making calls, sending emails, filing documents. Professional, composed, precise. The way you execute a plan you've been preparing for 15 years. Sunday morning, my doorbell rang at 6 a.m., then someone started banging on the door. I heard Margaret's voice outside, shouting my name, pleading for me to open up, saying we needed to talk immediately. I looked through the peephole and saw her, Ryan, and Patricia standing in my hallway, looking frantic. I didn't open the door, just went back to my laptop and kept working. They've come back 4 times since then. Last night, they showed up at 2 a.m., all of them, including Leonard and even Grandpa Martin, who doesn't drive at night anymore, so someone must have brought him. They were pounding on the door, crying, yelling about family and mistakes and miscommunications. Margaret kept saying they were joking, that I was ruining them, that I couldn't do this to my own family. Ryan threatened to call the police if I didn't let them in, then switched to begging, then back to threats. I'm writing this at my kitchen table, listening to them outside, trying to figure out if I'm home. They don't know I can hear them. They don't know I'm sitting here, sipping coffee, watching everything I built for them collapse exactly as I designed it. And the best part? I haven't even begun the real work yet. This is just the opening act, just them realizing they might have made a catastrophic error. They don't even know what I'm truly capable of yet. So yeah, that's where I'm at. They spent Thanksgiving telling me I was their biggest regret. And now they're outside my apartment at 2 a.m., sobbing about how I'm destroying the family. And honestly, I've never felt more at peace with a choice in my entire life. Update 1 okay? So I know many of you advised me to keep ignoring them and let it all unfold. And trust me, I value that advice. But here's the thing about revenge nobody mentions. The real satisfaction isn't watching them suffer from afar. It's seeing them try to defend their actions as their world falls apart. And yeah, some of you might think I'm being too harsh, but hear me out because this gets so much better and so much worse simultaneously. First, let me address the comments asking what exactly I did. I won't dive into specifics because I don't need this coming back to bite me. But essentially, remember how I co-signed their house refinancing at 19? That means I'm legally a co-owner. When I stopped those extra mortgage payments I'd been routing through a separate account, their monthly payments spiked by nearly $800 instantly. And they're already struggling because Dad's business never fully recovered, and Margaret works part-time retail. Ryan's client system, I built it with an admin backdoor because I'm not careless. Friday morning, I logged in and altered all his client contact details by 1 digit. Just one. Enough that when he tries to reach his top accounts this week, he'll hit wrong numbers. His December sales will crash, and he won't know why until he realizes the system's corrupted. And good luck explaining to your boss why you can't contact clients before year-end bonuses. Patricia and Leonard's retirement account? Nothing illegal. I just had admin access through my company's financial network. I removed myself from the authorization list and flagged concerns about account verification. Now their account is locked pending a 45 business day review. They're 62 and 64. They plan to retire next year. That plan just got messy. Grandpa Martin's assisted living fund? I shut it down. The facility called him Monday morning to discuss next month's payment. He thought his veteran benefits covered everything. They don't, not even close. So that's what I did over Black Friday while they were probably eating leftover turkey, convincing themselves I'd overreacted to their witty banter. And Monday is when things got really interesting because they weren't just panicking anymore. They were trying to explain. I was at my apartment Monday morning around 10 when my building's front desk called. Someone had sent a massive flower arrangement, the kind you'd see at a funeral. The card read, "From your family who cherishes you more than you realize." I told the desk to donate it to the senior center nearby. 20 minutes later, another bouquet arrived. Then another. By noon, 6 flower deliveries had come, all of which I refused. Then Ryan showed up at my office. Yeah, my office. I don't know how he got past security, but my assistant, Dana, called to say my brother was in the lobby demanding to see me. I told her to say I was in meetings all day. She came back 5 minutes later, saying he wouldn't leave and was causing a scene. That's when I decided to engage strategically because I wanted to gauge his mindset. I went to the lobby, and Ryan was there in his pricey suit, looking drained. The second he saw me, he launched into a speech about how he'd been up all night reflecting on Thanksgiving and realized maybe they'd gone too far with the jokes. Maybe gone too far. His exact words. I asked if he was there to apologize or to ask me to fix his financial mess. He got defensive, said he didn't need my help with anything. His business was fine. Why was I being so dramatic about obvious family teasing? I told him his client system was corrupted and he should check it. Watched his face go white. Then I walked back to the elevators. He followed, talking fast about how Mom was heartbroken, how the photo thing was just redecorating, how nobody meant what they said at dinner. I stopped and asked him directly. Did he mean it when he said I was too pathetic to start my own family? Did Patricia mean the betting pool? Did Mom mean I was her biggest regret? Ryan got quiet, then said I needed to understand the context. That I'd always been sensitive. That they'd learned to tease me harder because I took everything so seriously. He said it wasn't personal, just how they dealt with me because I was different from them. Different. Like that explained it all. I asked him how I was different. He looked uneasy and said I knew what he meant. That I'd always been more emotional, more reactive, harder to connect with. That as kids, I was the one who cried when teased, making things awkward. So they leaned into it. It became family tradition, and nobody thought about it anymore. What floored me was that he genuinely thought this was a valid excuse. Like, we bullied you for decades because you reacted to bullying, so it's kind of your fault for being emotional. The reasoning was wild. I told him I wanted him out of my building or I'd call security. He switched gears, said Mom and Dad would lose the house without my mortgage help. I asked why that was my problem. He said because I'm on the deed and foreclosure would tank my credit too. I smiled and told him I'd already consulted a real estate attorney about transferring my ownership share. He looked stunned, said I couldn't do that. It was legally complex. They'd fight it. I told him to try. I had records of every payment I'd made for 8 years, proof I'd been providing support they never acknowledged or appreciated. A judge would likely find that interesting, how they treated me while I funded their lifestyle. Ryan left after that, but the floodgates opened. That afternoon, Patricia called, and I probably should have let it go to voicemail, but I was curious about her approach. She started by asking if I was okay, which was bold from someone who'd announced a betting pool about me ditching family events. I stayed silent, waiting. She shifted to saying Leonard was stressed about their frozen retirement account, and could I look into it since I'm tech-savvy. No apology, no acknowledgement, just straight to asking me to fix the problem I'd caused. I asked if she remembered what she said at Thanksgiving. She got defensive, said it was a joke, that everyone knew it was a joke, and I was being absurd for holding on to it. I asked who was in the betting pool. She went quiet. I asked again. She said it was just her, Leonard, and a few cousins, that they'd been drinking, and it was a silly thing people say at holidays. I asked if she'd taken my money. If the pool was real. She admitted it was, but insisted it was all in good fun. That I'd always been too sensitive about family stuff. There it was again, too sensitive. Like the issue was my reaction to their actions, not their actions themselves. I told Patricia her retirement account was between her and her bank, and I couldn't help. She got upset, saying I was punishing her for something trivial, that she was my aunt, had been there my whole life. I reminded her she'd announced at Thanksgiving that they were betting on when I'd abandoned the family. She said that's not what she meant. I asked what she did mean. She couldn't answer, just kept saying it came out wrong, that I was taking it too literally, that families should be able to tease without everyone getting offended. I told her I hoped the retirement review went well and hung up. Tuesday morning, Margaret showed up at my apartment at 7 a.m. I heard her knocking and checked the peephole. She was alone, holding a photo album. I didn't open the door, but she knew I was home because my car was parked, so she started talking through the door. She said she'd been looking through old albums, found pictures of me as a baby, a toddler, and wanted me to know she loved me. Always had. But things had gotten complicated over the years. She was crying. I could hear it. Part of me wanted to open the door because it's your mom crying outside, but I kept thinking about those shredded photos in the trash. She said Dad was having panic attacks about the mortgage, and could I please talk to them? That whatever I was upset about, we could work through it. But I couldn't just cut them off financially without warning. I opened the door then, not because I felt guilty, but because I needed her to see my face when I said what I had to say. I told her I'd been making those mortgage payments for 8 years, and she'd never thanked me. Never acknowledged it. She looked confused, said she didn't know that Dad handled the finances. I didn't believe her, but it didn't matter. I asked if she meant it when she called me her biggest regret. She opened and closed her mouth, then said it wasn't like that. She was trying to be funny, that Ryan had started the joke and everyone was laughing, so she went along. I asked why she tore up my photos. She said she didn't. That Dad had been cleaning and probably tossed duplicates. I told her I saw them in the trash, ripped up. Every photo of me destroyed. She cried harder, said maybe Dad was stressed, that things had been tense, that I had to understand the pressure they were under. And there it was. Maybe Dad was stressed, not an apology, not an admission that shredding your child's photos is unhinged. Just an excuse, just context, just me needing to understand. I asked why they treated me differently than Ryan. She got quiet, then said I wasn't different, that they loved both their sons equally, but Ryan had always been easier. Easier to parent. Easier to be proud of, easier to brag about to friends. She said it like it was just a fact of life. Like some kids are tall, some are short, some are easier to love. I told her she needed to leave. She begged me to reconsider whatever I was doing with their finances. I closed the door. She stood outside for another 10 minutes, crying before leaving. Here's what I learned from these talks. They genuinely don't think they did anything wrong. Or if they do, they think it's so minor compared to my reaction that I'm the unreasonable one. They think calling me their biggest regret, shredding my photos, and betting on when I'd leave is just family banter. Just how they communicate. Just jokes I'm too sensitive to handle. And now they're panicking. Because the sensitive son they've mocked for 30 years was the one holding their financial lives together, and they never noticed until it was gone. Wednesday morning, I got a call from an unknown number. It was Grandpa Martin calling from the assisted living facility's office because I'd blocked his cell. He said we needed to discuss his housing situation, that there'd been a billing error. I told him there was no error. He asked what I meant, and I explained I'd been covering part of his costs for 3 years through a fund I'd created, and I'd closed it. He was silent, then asked why I'd do that. I asked if he remembered what he said at Thanksgiving. He said he'd said lots of things. He's an old man who jokes around. I asked specifically if he remembered saying they should have stopped at 1 kid. More silence. Then he said I was really going to punish him over that. That he'd fought in Vietnam, raised a family, and I was going to let him lose his home over a dumb comment. I told him his veteran benefits would cover basic housing, just not the deluxe suite with the private bathroom and social programs. He'd be fine, just less comfortable. He started yelling, saying I was cruel. That he's 83 and I'm his grandson, and how dare I do this to him. I asked again if he meant what he said. He said no, of course not. But that didn't mean I could hold it over him forever. I told him to figure out his housing and hung up. Blocked the number. By Wednesday afternoon, Ryan's girlfriend, Wendy, got involved. She sent a long text saying she'd been dating Ryan for 2 years and had never met me, which now made sense given what Ryan told her about Thanksgiving. She said she'd told Ryan what he and his family did was awful and he needed to fix it. But he kept saying I was overreacting. Wendy wanted to meet me, hear my side, because Ryan's story wasn't adding up. She suggested coffee somewhere neutral. And here's the thing, I was curious about Wendy. If she'd been with Ryan for 2 years and never met me, it meant he'd deliberately kept us apart. That meant he knew, on some level, that his family's treatment of me was bad enough he didn't want her to see it. So I agreed to meet her. Which is how I ended up at a mall food court Thursday afternoon, sitting across from my brother's girlfriend, watching her expression shift as I laid out exactly what had been happening for 15 years. And that's where I'll pause this update, because what Wendy told me next opened a whole new layer to this mess I didn't see coming. Let's just say Ryan's been feeding her a very different version of our family dynamic. And some of what he said makes him look even worse than I thought possible. More soon. This is getting messier than I planned. Update 2. All right, I left off saying Wendy had information that changed everything. And I wasn't kidding. Before I dive into what she said, I need to address some comments from the last update, because apparently I need to clarify something. I'm not doing this out of spite or pettiness. This is about accountability. Logical, inevitable consequences for 30 years of relentless emotional abuse that I funded financially while they told me I was nothing. Some of you get it. Some think I should let it go. To those people, honestly, what part of them calling me their biggest regret while I paid their mortgage sounds like something you just let go? Anyway, Thursday afternoon, mall food court, chosen because it's public and neutral. If this turned into an ambush, I could walk away. Wendy arrived on time. I'd been curious what kind of person would date Ryan for 2 years. She seemed normal. Mid-20s, dental hygienist, visibly uneasy about the situation. We sat down, and she said she felt weird being there because she was technically going behind Ryan's back. But after hearing about Thanksgiving, she couldn't stay out of it. She said Ryan told her we had a big family fight and I stormed out over nothing. That I was being dramatic, as always. Those words, as always, like it was a pattern she'd heard about. I asked what Ryan had said about me over their 2 years together. She hesitated, then admitted he'd portrayed me as the family troublemaker. Said I was jealous of him. That I'd always been competitive and bitter about his success. That I made family gatherings awkward with my attitude. That I'd been like this since we were kids, and the family had learned to work around me. She said Ryan told her I lived alone, had no friends because I pushed people away. That I'd always been socially challenging. When she asked why she'd never met me, Ryan said I refused to meet his girlfriends because I couldn't handle his happiness. That I'd sabotaged his past relationships by being hostile to women he dated. I sat there hearing this character assassination and wasn't even shocked. Of course, Ryan had crafted a narrative where I was the villain. Of course, he'd spent 2 years ensuring Wendy never questioned my absence. What hit me hardest was when she said Ryan told her I was financially reckless and had borrowed money from the family multiple times without repaying it. That's why they were frustrated with me. I asked her to repeat that. She looked embarrassed but confirmed it. Ryan had explicitly said I owed our parents money and refused to pay it back, that it caused tension. I pulled out my phone and showed her my banking app. Scrolled through 8 years of mortgage payment confirmations to my parents' address. Showed her receipts for the assisted living facility payments. Showed invoices for Ryan's client system, marked paid but never charged. Wendy's face changed as she scrolled. She kept saying, "Oh my God, oh my God." I told her she could photograph anything she wanted because I needed someone in Ryan's life to know the truth. She asked why I'd paid for all this if they treated me so badly. I explained about co-signing at 19, about feeling responsible, about thinking if I helped enough, they'd eventually value me, about being young and foolish and desperate for family approval. Then I told her what they said at Thanksgiving, everything. The betting pool, the shredded photos, Mom calling me her biggest regret, Grandpa saying they should have stopped at one kid. All of it, Wendy teared up, which was odd because she doesn't know me. But I guess hearing about a family tearing someone apart over turkey hits differently when you've been told that person is the problem. She said she needed to confront Ryan, that this wasn't okay, that he'd lied to her about something major. I told her to be careful because Ryan would spin this too. And sure enough, 2 hours later, I got angry texts from Ryan. They started with him asking why I was turning his girlfriend against him, then what lies I'd told Wendy, then saying I was sabotaging his relationship because I couldn't stand his happiness, then threatening to come to my apartment and confront me. I didn't respond, just screenshot everything and saved it. Friday morning, Ryan showed up at my building at 6 a.m. Security called, and I told them not to let him up, that he wasn't welcome. Ryan lost it in the lobby, started yelling about how I was ruining his life, how Wendy was questioning everything because of my lies. Security escorted him out. He called 17 times in the next hour. I didn't answer. Then Dad called, the first time he'd reached out in this whole mess. He'd stayed silent, letting Margaret do the begging. But apparently Ryan told them I was trying to ruin his relationship. Dad said I needed to stop immediately. That messing with Ryan's personal life crossed a line. I asked what line exactly. He said family doesn't sabotage family. That whatever issues I had, Ryan's relationship was off limits. I reminded him Ryan told Wendy I was financially reckless and owed the family money when the opposite was true. Dad went quiet, then said Ryan was probably just venting, that people say things when frustrated, that I was taking it too seriously as always, there it was again. I asked if he knew I'd been making mortgage payments for 8 years. He said he knew someone was helping through a hardship program. I told him it was me, that I'd routed payments through a separate account so they wouldn't feel awkward about my help. He asked why I'd do that without telling them. I asked why he shredded my photos. He said he didn't. That Margaret must have been cleaning and got carried away. That I was obsessing over something meaningless instead of focusing on the real issue. Their house was going into foreclosure. I asked if he remembered what Grandpa Martin said at Thanksgiving. He said Grandpa's old and didn't mean anything by it. I asked if he remembered Margaret calling me her biggest regret. He said she was trying to be funny and it came out wrong. Every excuse, every justification, never an apology or admission that maybe they'd been cruel to me my entire life. I told Dad I was done and hung up. He called back. I blocked his number. Saturday, things escalated in a way I hadn't expected. Patricia, Leonard, Margaret, and Dad showed up at my apartment at 8 a.m., knocking and begging for a family meeting. I didn't open the door, but I heard everything through it. Patricia started, saying their retirement account was still frozen, they'd called every number, and could I please make a call? I stayed silent. Leonard said they'd worked 40 years, and I was jeopardizing their future over a dumb comment Patricia made while drinking. I stayed silent. Margaret said they'd gotten a foreclosure notice, had 90 days to catch up, that Dad's business was barely surviving, and they couldn't afford the new mortgage amount, that I was making them homeless. Dad said they'd raised me, fed me, put me through college, and this was how I repaid them. I opened the door then. They looked relieved until they saw my face. I asked Dad if he wanted to discuss who paid for what. He said that's not what he meant, that parents don't keep score with kids. I told him I'd paid over $60,000 in mortgage support over 8 years, and they'd never acknowledged or thanked me. Patricia tried to interrupt, saying this wasn't about money. This was about family. I asked how much was in the betting pool. She said it didn't matter. I said it mattered to me. Leonard said I was being childish, holding grudges, making things harder than necessary. I asked if announcing a betting pool about me abandoning the family was childish. He said I was twisting things. Margaret started crying, asking what she needed to do to fix this, saying she'd apologize 1,000 times if that's what I wanted. I asked if she meant it when she called me her biggest regret. She said no, of course not. She loved me, always had. I asked what she'd been angry about. She couldn't answer. Dad tried a different tack, said maybe they'd all made mistakes, but I was making bigger ones by destroying the family over words. That actions matter more than words, and my actions showed I never cared about them. I told him he was right that actions matter, and their actions for 30 years were to treat me like I was nothing while I kept them financially stable. Patricia said I was being dramatic, calling it 30 years. I asked when it started then. When did the family jokes about me being different, difficult, too sensitive begin? She said that's just normal sibling stuff I was turning into abuse. I asked if it was normal for Ryan to tell Wendy I was financially reckless and owed the family money. Margaret looked shocked, asked if Ryan really said that. I told her to ask him. They left after that, but it confirmed what I knew. They weren't sorry for what they did. They were sorry it had consequences. They thought the problem was my reaction, not their behavior. They thought if they explained enough, justified enough, I'd forgive and fix everything. Sunday morning, I got a Facebook message from a cousin, Evan, I hadn't spoken to in 5 years, asking if I was okay, saying he'd heard the family was having issues. I asked who told him. He said Patricia called his mom, saying I was having a breakdown and cutting everyone off, asking family to reach out. So now they were rallying extended family to pressure me. I told Evan the truth, that they'd spent Thanksgiving calling me a mistake, and I'd stopped financially supporting people who hated me. He asked if I was serious. I sent screenshots of texts and messages I'd received. He stopped replying. Monday morning, Ryan's work situation imploded. I don't know all the details, but Dana said she got a call from someone claiming to be Ryan's sales manager, asking if our company had done tech work for their firm. Dana transferred the call to me, and the manager, sounding irritated, asked if I'd built or had access to their client system. I explained I'd built a private system for Ryan, not his company, and had recently noticed data corruption issues and advised he not rely on it. The manager asked if I'd corrupted it intentionally. I said I'd stopped maintaining a system I'd provided for free, and it had dependencies Ryan didn't know about. The manager thanked me and hung up. 2 hours later, Ryan called from an unblocked number, furious, saying I'd gotten him suspended pending an investigation into his client management practices, that his boss thought he'd manipulated data, that I'd ruined his career. I asked if he'd told his boss the system was privately built by me and used without company approval. He went silent. Apparently, Ryan had been presenting my system as his own or something he had legitimate access to. He'd used it to seem more organized and successful than his colleagues. Now his company was questioning his handling of sensitive client data. That wasn't planned, but I'm not upset about it. Ryan said I'd crossed a line, that messing with his job was different from family issues. I asked what line, since he'd lied to Wendy about me for 2 years and took credit for my work. He said that was different, that I'd offered to help and he'd accepted. I asked if lying to Wendy about me being financially reckless counted as accepting help. He said that was beside the point. I said it was exactly the point, that he'd spent 2 years lying about me and now faced consequences for other lies. He said I was a psychopath, that normal people don't plan revenge for 15 years. I told him normal families don't bet on when their son will stop coming to holidays. He hung up. Patricia called that afternoon, saying the bank had frozen all their accounts pending an investigation into some transfers. She said it was my fault, that I'd flagged something that triggered a review. I told her I'd only removed myself from their account authorization list, which prompted the bank to verify activity, standard procedure. She said they might lose everything. I said that was their problem. My parents' lawyer called my lawyer Monday morning with a settlement offer. They'd sign over the full deed if I forgave the mortgage payments. My lawyer asked what I wanted. I said I wanted full repayment or I'd force a sale. He asked if I was sure. I said I'd never been more sure. They have 30 days to pay or the house goes on the market. Grandpa Martin's facility moved him to a smaller room his benefits cover. Patricia and Leonard's accounts are still under review, but they've pulled what they could and downsized to a condo. Ryan's working retail while looking for another sales job without references. And me? I'm in my fully paid apartment with a job I excel at, free of people who made me feel worthless for 30 years while I kept them comfortable. Some will say I went too far. Some will say they deserved worse. I don't care either way. They had 30 years to treat me like I mattered. They chose not to. They had 2 weeks after Thanksgiving to genuinely apologize and acknowledge their actions. They chose to explain, justify, and call me oversensitive. Every consequence they're facing is a direct result of their choices. I'm done being the son who wasn't enough. Done being the mistake they kept around because I was useful. Done funding the comfortable lives of people who celebrated my absence. They wanted me gone. They got their wish. They just didn't realize I was the foundation everything rested on. The betting pool question was answered, by the way. I left and Patricia won $400 right before her accounts were frozen. I hope she enjoys it. To everyone who's followed this, thanks for listening. Sometimes you need strangers online to confirm you're not crazy for being angry about being treated like trash your whole life. Some suggested I forgive them. Move on. Be the bigger person. But here's the thing about being the bigger person. It usually means accepting bad treatment to keep others comfortable. I spent 30 years being the bigger person. I'm done now.